In today's video, we are sewing design number 3, which is the Starburst design. This is a fun design for square quilts, but it can be adapted easily to rectangular quilts. Not too much prep and not too difficult sewing, and you will have a beautiful design on your hands. So let's find out more. Hi, I'm Tom and I'm the Colourblind Quilter, and you're watching This Is How You Quilt It, and this is video number 3, the Starburst design. We are making a flip book of 21 all over quick and easy quilting designs so that you have something to flip through and get your quilt projects finished fast. But rather than just showing you the steps to draw lines and sew this, we are actually looking at example quilts as well that have been mocked up using these quilting designs. It's very important to be able to visualize what's possible when it comes to using a quilting design, and that's what I'm aiming to do with these examples, is to show you the possibilities. If you are just starting out with this series, you will find a link in the description below to the free worksheet that has all the supplies and prep work that you need to do to sew all these samples. You'll also find a link to the playlist so you can catch up on all the previous videos, and then you can follow along as we release new ones. So remember to stick around to the end of the video so you can see those example quilts that I was telling you about. So let's get started. So when it comes to planning your lines for this, you just need to check again how far you can quilt your lines for your batting, and make sure that you do not leave any gaps bigger than what your batting specifies. If your batting says lines no more than 8 inches apart, make sure you don't leave any gaps bigger than 8 inches. On the difficulty rating, this scores a 2 out of 5, and on the cuddle rating, this also gets 2 out of 5. So let's look at the prep work that's required to make this happen. So we're going to begin by marking a plus sign on our square. So with your ruler, measure 5 inches across to the center of the square and mark a line. Then rotate your block 90 degrees and repeat, measuring 5 inches from the side, and draw a second line, and you now have a plus on your quilt. Next, we are going to draw an X from corner to corner. So turn this, align your ruler with the corners, and draw a line from the top corner all the way down to the bottom, making sure that you are intersecting in the center of the plus. Then rotate and draw the other side of the X, again making sure that you're intersecting with the plus. Now we're going to fill in the gaps between the plus and the cross, adding as many lines as you like. You just need to line your ruler up so that the line will intersect with the middle, and then choose wherever you want the line to land in between the cross and the plus, and then mark your lines. And keep marking lines until you've marked as many as you want. In my instance, I'm only adding 1 line between the plus and the cross, but if this was a much bigger sample, I would be adding lots more lines. So in total, I have 8 lines on my design. Now the sewing steps. This is just as easy as designs 1 and 2. It's sewing straight lines and they're all marked for you, so you just have to follow the lines. But first we want to secure our sample. So we are going to start by sewing the plus line. Starting at the top, sew your way down the quilt until you get to the bottom, cut your threads, and then rotate 90 degrees and repeat, sewing the middle line from top to bottom. At this stage you can remove any pins because your sample will be secure. Next we're going to sew the X, so that will be from corner to corner. So similarly as you did with the plus, just start in the very corner on the edge of the sample. As you get to the middle though, slow down to make sure that your line will intersect, and then sew on down, cut threads, rotate and repeat. And every time you're sewing a line and you come to that center, you want to slow down just a little bit to make sure that your line does definitely intersect through the middle. And then just repeat, sewing all the rest of the lines until you have sewn all your marked lines. That was easy. I mean, honestly, so easy. Now let's talk about a few things that we just want to watch out for when it comes to this design. You may prefer a completely random design. So once you've marked your plus and your cross, you can put your lines as close together or as far apart as you like. If however you prefer symmetry in your design, you'll want to make sure that you have a consistent number of lines between the plus and between the corner. The idea is that it's supposed to look like lines radiating out from the center. So it does suit random improv style, or it also suits symmetrical planned out. So choose which one you like and then just make sure that all your lines intersect through the center. If you are going for the improv design, just go big and bold and really go for it. One thing to be mindful of though is that if you do add too many lines, that center can become really dense and really thick. So just be careful about that when you're adding all your lines. If you add hundreds of lines, it will end up with a really thick, weird, strange, stiff patch in the middle of your quilt. If you were to use decorative stitches for this could look absolutely amazing. And if you were to use decorative stitches with variegated thread, this would just blow your mind. It's so versatile and it's so easy to do, and you can play with this as an experiment. I would maybe try sewing lines in groups of 2 together to create mirrored lines. That would look very cool. Now let's take a look at some example quilts. And I do have a rectangular quilt example to show you that it is possible to do this on rectangular quilts. Right, so our first example is a quilt made up with square in the square block. On a previous video, I received a comment asking if I could make the lines a little bit more visible. So I have made them a little bit thicker so that they are easier to see. So hopefully that will make it easier for you to visualize these. So what you can see with this is that it works to create a focal point in the center of this quilt. Now, because we have lines going from corner to corner in an X, what happens is it intersects through the square in the square quilt block very nicely. I think this looks really nice. I've kept it to just 8 lines as I don't want it to be too dense, but this covers the majority of the quilt very nicely. As I mentioned, you do have to be careful though, because as these lines intersect in the center, they do create a little bit of a stiff, thick part of your quilt. So if you were adding lots and lots of these lines, it could potentially become very dense and very odd feeling in the very middle of your quilt. So just bear that in mind. And then just to take away the quilt to show you just the lines, you can see how they look. And that really helps you to see the starburst effect from this, which is really nice. So this next example quilt is a winding ways quilt. And this is one of the quilts in the pre-quilt library that I like to use. Now, again, this is intersecting through the blocks on the X that goes from the corner to the corner. So it has nice symmetry through it. Again, there are 8 lines here. I really think that this works very nicely. It creates a center focal point, drawing your eye to the center of the quilt. I think that this is a really nice, simple design that doesn't detract from the piecing here, because the piecing of this quilt, the block, is creating secondary patterns, which really is the star of the show. So this quilting design works very nicely because it's not too heavy and it's not detracting from the quilt pattern. Now let's look at an example of this using a rectangular quilt. This quilt is made up with the Pennsylvania block from my Behind the Block series. Now this worked very nicely because there is a red square that is center of this quilt. So it feels like all the lines are converging in that red square, or all the lines are coming from that red square radiating out from the quilt. This works very nicely with the angles on this quilt. Talked about this in the previous video. Because of the diagonal movement, it can either clash or it can complement the lines. And I think in this instance, it's one of these cases where it does complement the lines nicely, even though they're not the same angles. But I think that this works just fine the way that it is. And I do really like this because with the red square at the center, it really does feel like it's a focal point that draws your eyes into the center of the quilt, and I really do like that. But it still lets the quilt block shine through, and it doesn't pull away from pattern too much. And in this example, there are 10 lines here, so you can add more or you can take away lines depending on how wide your batting allows you to quilt. And then let's take away the quilting design and show you the lines underneath that. When the quilting pattern is taken away, you can really see how those lines converge in the center. And that's what I'm talking about, having that dense center. So that's something you just have to think about when you're planning your quilt. Now, our final design. In the last video with the shattered glass design, I was talking about how the shattered glass design didn't particularly complement the piecing of the carpenter's star. And I said that I would be showing you that in this video. Now, this is the carpenter's star quilt. Now, you can see this works beautifully with this design. It's like this quilting design was made for this quilt. The star at the center is the focal point of this quilt, and then all the lines are intersecting through the points of the star, which is perfect. It really feels like starlight radiating out from the center of the quilt, and I love how this looks. Now, somebody commented on the shattered glass that they actually liked how it looked with the carpenter star, and that's absolutely fine. It's your quilt and it's absolutely your choice what you do with it, and nobody can tell you otherwise. But for me, when I compared this to the shattered glass, this just sings out to me. It just emphasizes the quilt design. It adds to the overall feel of the quilt. It doesn't detract from the piecing. It just makes the piecing really stand out and really pop. And that's what we want our quilting to do. We want something that either blends into the background, or we want something that highlights the piecing. And this works so well, just so well. I'm so pleased I wanted to show you this just to show you how you can really work a design into your quilt so that it really feels like a featured, thought out part of the quilt planning. This really is perfect. I wouldn't change anything more about this. And so that was our example quilt. So that was the Starburst design, and as I promised you, it's quick and easy and just takes a little bit of planning. Don't forget there is a book coming out that's going to accompany this series. It will have step-by-step instructions and diagrams showing you how to plan and sew all of these designs. I'll also be adding 9 more designs that will not be featured in this video series for you, and then it will be packed full of lots of other information to help you when it comes to quilting your projects. So if you want to find out when that comes out, make sure you sign up for the mailing list using the description in the link below. As you're sewing along with the series, I'd love for you to share your progress on Instagram using the hashtag #ThisIsHowYouQuilt and tag me at The Colorblind Quilter so that I can follow along with all the samples that you have been sewing. And in the next video, we are going to be sewing design number 4, which is grids for days. So if you like this video, please do consider giving it a thumbs up and make sure you are subscribed and click that bell so you will be notified when the next video in this series comes out. And until next time, take care.